So today, basically, the moment we talk about this contract, it's a concern. The most basic thing any law student would know, what is a contract? This is what we start with, understanding the law. But when it comes to vetting the contract, sometimes even if we are the law professionals, we are the law graduates, we have a lot of mixed ideas, some preconceived notions, some hazy ideas. What exactly is contract drafting? Or what exactly is contract vetting? Because the moment I'm talking about the vetting, I have seen so many people, I'm asking students, what do you mean by contract vetting? The most common answer I get from people is they say just proofreading. In a way, it's right. It is a proofreading, but proofreading from a legal perspective. Because if it's merely a proofreading, we can take help of so many available softwares. But this is a proofreading from a legal angle. So whenever you having a document in your hand, and a document as simple as or as complex as a contract. The moment we're talking about the contract, the documents are very simple. People have one pager contracts. People have contracts over 100 pages also. So you just cannot define a contract drafting or a vetting in a closed bracket, because with the nature of the contract, the seriousness of the person who's vetting the contract, the person who's drafting the contract will be different. The expectation from the role will be different. So if I'm talking about the contract vetting, let's understand what are the key areas, some of the key pointers we need to have in mind. Otherwise, also as a lawyer, whenever we're sitting with any information, what is first expected from us? Confidentiality. Because whenever we are dealing with any document, the basic expectation from any client, from a lawyer is that whatever is shared between the client and the lawyer would be kept confidential. Similarly, for a contract also, we're looking to have the contract as tight as possible, as close as possible. But still, as we are aware, the moment we're talking about contract, it depends from one pager to 100 and plus pages. Because of these varied natures of the transactions, functions, dealings, the contract will always be different when it comes to level of degree which is required for the vetting and drafting. Let's come back to these basic two concepts. What is a contract drafting and what is a contract vetting? What will come beforehand? In the hierarchy, what is first and what is second? So obviously, if I have to ask you, I think the answer is very simple. Till we draft something, we cannot vet it. So the drafting comes first and then we get into the vetting. Drafting is done. When we are drafting a contract, we need to have some of the key points in place. So I will not be focusing much of the drafting part. Let's shift our focus on the vetting side. And maybe we can have some comparative analysis side by side. So when I'm talking about the vetting, first of all, I need to have a thorough research. See, when I'm talking about the lawyers or the law graduates, people who are pursuing the law students, the most common thing is like research. Yeah, I know it's for interns. For internship, yeah, what we get, we don't get anything except the research assignment. This is so boring. As an intern, we just doing the research. I don't know why we look down upon the research, because I feel research is the essence. If I have to do anything or to excel into anything, research is the base. Without doing the research, how would I know? Because we put it in the tagline of research, we are being so skeptical. Otherwise, if I ask you a simple question, that when you were looking to close down on a college, you wanted to enroll yourself for a law program. Didn't you don't do the research? That time also you were doing the research, but it was more on a lighter note. It was more on a friendly basis. You were asking your friends and families, and through the network, you could zero down, or based on the percentage and the marks and everything, you could sometimes the location is also concerned. So because of these things, you just zero down a college and you got admission. But if you think practically, if you think minor in a meticulous manner, you would say research is an integral part of our own life. Every day we begin our day with a research only. We are thinking constantly what we'll be doing. We keep gathering the information, we are observing. May not be in the research typical format, but some or the other way we are constantly doing some research. So yeah, before drafting anything, it is essential to hold all the relevant laws which are applicable. This is for the drafting part. Whenever I'm drafting something, I need to understand what all laws will be applicable to me. I just cannot agree into any contraventions. Sometimes people say this is a standard format which companies are following. There's nothing much to bother. Just ignore. Like what we do, almost all the banking sites, all the payment sites, everywhere, the moment they give us a huge page of terms and conditions, merely by looking at I agree, I just click on the I agree. I'm not even bothered to read out even the headings of those terms and conditions. This is how we have been living in the society, and that's general. There's no right or wrong about it, because since this is the practice we are following, For agreements also, this is how we do for contracts. When the company shares a contract, normally if it's a small vendor, what they would say, this is a company policy. We cannot annoy the company. We cannot offend the person with whom they're linked. So just say yes for everything they're saying. So you need to understand there should not be any contravention, first of all the laws and your terms and conditions. And this is basically for the sake of knowledge. So you need to understand, first of all, what are the publicly available contracts, which are mostly for the demonstration. How do we get into research? If I ask you to draft a contract between two people, the one person is supplying some medicines and the other person is a hospital maybe or a nursing home. So how do you draft a contract? First thing you would do nowadays for today's generation, they have the blessing of this social media. They have these search engines. So you can seek help from these different modalities. So first of all, you would be looking for getting some sample ideas, some templates, some formats, which are publicly available on various platforms, various domains. Then in terms of those contracts which are generalized to fit the requirement of the maximum, obviously, these are templates which are created. Whenever anybody is creating a template, what is the idea? The idea is basically to give by and large a fitting document which will fit to people in most of the situations, generally, not specifically. When I'm looking for specifications, we're looking for customizations. Then requirement, all the transactions vary, and therefore contract from the transaction cannot be used for another transactions. That's how lawyers are into place. If everything was so simple, if templates only could be used for everything, we would not need lawyers, right? So we agree to that, that even if we have templates, we have formats, there are so many things which are shared on different platforms. Still, we need a lawyer. Still, we need a legal professional because the contracts will vary for every single transaction because this is the most highly customized domain of the industry. Because in the legal industry, there cannot be a copy paste for anything and everything. Because even if I'm talking about, let's take a common example of a builder. When he's developer, he's dealing with his tenants. He'll be giving a contract, a similar agreement to all the people, all the tenants, all the people who are buying the flat. Still, there will be some or the other element that will be changing. Maybe the price or the square feet and definitely details of the parties. Because of which a legal professional is always required at every aspect. And because of this, we also have a lot of value to contribute to society. So here, our legal knowledge plays a crucial role. We are the legal professionals. We understand the meaning of these words. We understand the crucial aspect of these things. So we need to understand when we're mentioning about the parties, what exactly are we mentioning? Why do we do a research? So to understand what exactly is the intention of these people to get into a contract. Sometimes a lot of people, when they come across a contract, they say it has already been drafted. The person who drafted must have got all the information. So there's no point for me to revisit everything in detail. So I'll just glance through and I think it's okay. Sometimes people only check few of the sections. Like they say, I'll just check about the laws applicable, or at the most, I'll check the indemnity clause, or I'll check about the details of the party. The rest all is standard. I need not check it. What is the problem in this if I ask you? And that's fine also, right? If I'm talking about the practical aspect, when I'm dealing with volumes, when I'm dealing with 50 tenants, all the tenants are given the same agreement. So I just change the name of the party, details of the flat, property, and then I share the same document. I need not go to the whole document again and again. It's monotonous and it's time consuming, right? So why do we still insist of going to the whole document, even if the work is more of a similar nature? What could be the reason here in this? Anybody think of anything?
Yes, one reason could be because the nature of the parties itself is different. So, supposing some party is a minor or some party, so the contract will have a different effect in each case. That's one reason I can think of.
That's perfectly fine. Really nice. Very good. And the most common problem which I have come across all my life when I was dealing with the paper is the most common thing is typographical errors we have when we have copy paste. So sometimes there are some human errors. So why we go to the whole document again is obviously if the nature of the parties is little different, if I'm talking about the minors or if I'm talking about the senior citizens or if I'm talking about the widows, I'm talking about the succession documents. So the applicability would be different. Secondly, when I'm talking about copy paste, I'm talking about monotonous documents. So there are chances of human errors. So it's always good to have a double check. Because of which we say, even if the contracts of a similar nature, do read the whole document. Because once the document is signed, both the parties are bound by it. Then you cannot go and plead that, there was this error or that error. Obviously, these things are debatable, the matter of fight. We approach the court, we fight for our right, but then it's a time, money, and energy. So beforehand, it's good to read the whole document completely to avoid any of these discrepancies. Then here again, as you said, Mr. Sushil rightly mentioned, if I'm talking about the different parties, the nature of party is different, so the applicability would also be different. So I need to understand my client's requirement in detail. The person I'm dealing with, what are the two parties exactly intending to do? So I need to have, even if I have my some of the customizations are required, as I told you. Even if we are talking about a monotonous thing, I'm talking about a repetitive nature, some of the customizations would be required. So I need to understand if I'm meeting my client, I need to ask as many questions as possible to get a clarity so I can proceed further. Sometimes people feel these are almost of a similar nature. There's no point in asking same question again and again. But I'm telling you with my own experience, the more you ask, the better, you are in a better position to draft or vet a document in an effective manner. Because the client would take something or the other for assumptions. There would be a feeling of, I've already said, taken for granted feeling will always be there. But the more you ask the questions, these loopholes are taken care. Then there are no leakages, there are no loopholes, and the contract is as tight as possible. And see, if I'm talking about the contracts, as I told you, it could be one pager or it could be 100 and plus pages. So what is the important? What is the concern? I'll tell you, one person was dealing in a software. So I had to design a software contract for the person. So here the person was sitting in India and he was dealing with the person who was sitting in Africa. And they were doing some designing part. And he said, since the person available in Africa is reasonable, I want to deal with that person. Obviously, our laws and African laws would be different. So I was looking to get through both. And he was focusing again and again, ma'am, you don't put too much of energy in this because even if the person is in Africa, the laws applicable would be all in India only. So we are all not really bothered for the African laws. And obviously, I was not very convinced with this idea that whatever it is, if the person is sitting in Africa, the laws applicable, we need to consider African laws. We cannot ignore it completely. But after talking to my client for 3, 4 times, finally in the fourth time, he told me the contract is only a one-time affair and the deal has already been done. The paperwork is a post-dated paperwork. In that case, I realized that it's actually not worth putting in the effort digging too much of the African laws because they've already got the deal, the transaction is over, it's just the paperwork which is pending. To understand what is the key essence of the particular deal, particular transaction, it's about the timing, it's about a particular product, it's about the service, it's about a particular deal. So, what exactly is the focus at that time? I know this is not a right thing to appreciate any of these backdated documents, but it happens so because the person I was dealing with that person on a regular basis, I could not deny that. So this is how sometimes it happens. We're talking about only the one-time transactions and it's in the near future. So we are not digging too much on the legal aspect because we know it will be done without any flaws. But just to be on a safer side to avoid the future complication, we still prefer having all the laws in place, all the compliances in place. What will be the problems if anything goes wrong? So obviously, we always take care of all the problems. What if all the what ifs needs to be taken care, right? Because if I'm talking about the legal professional, the best thing about the legal professionals are they are constantly working towards the what ifs. So you need to understand if anything goes wrong, how will you handle the situation? What is the backup plan you have? Or what is the remedy you have available for the client? Or if I'm talking about any dispute among the parties, this is the most common thing when two people are dealing with each other, they might have a conflict of interest, products, services, anything. It could be anything. They don't agree to the pricing anymore, or the timing is our problem, whatever. So you're looking to understand the dispute resolution model. Now, when I'm talking about having the ADR in place, alternate dispute resolution, it is so simple for me to draft. But what is the difficulty in vetting it? Because the moment I'm talking about, the both the parties will be referred to the arbitrator in case of any dispute. What is so important from a vettor's point of view? If I'm vetting the document, if I have document, what is so important in that I need to understand what will be the laws applicable. If I'm talking about the ADR, I need to understand if I'm talking about which laws. Even if it's the same country, I'm referring to the courts of Mumbai will have jurisdiction or any other court. If it's a cross-border transactions, I need to understand the laws of which country will be applicable. Because ADR, it sounds simple, but you need to be specifically mentioning the laws of the land that will be applicable. So as a legal vet, you need to have this thing in mind clearly that if I'm talking about this area provision, I need to understand the applicability because people feel area will come in place only when there is a problem. But obviously, we are thinking about those what ifs. So if you are reading a document from a legal professional point of view, please get these checks right in place. Obviously, if you are the person who's vetting the document, you need to check the draft thoroughly. What do you mean that checking the draft thoroughly? Then we're talking about a lot of the due diligences. You need to jot down them critical points. Sometimes the client was saying something, you have put down something, but the outcome is something different to me. Because obviously, this is a human perception. When I'm drafting something, my thought process is on a different side. I'm writing it and I would read it as the same. But when somebody else is reading, the meaning might be changed. So, as a legal professional, the core importance, the core focus is always on having a meaning which is most common, which is most neutral. So, there is absolute no ambiguity, there is absolute no multiple meanings, because this is the most common thing we are looking to avoid. Whoever is reading should be able to read it in a similar sense as I'm writing. So there is absolute no other meaning, there is absolute no other concern attached to it. For doing this, I cannot add. I mean, people say it should not be too verbose. Nowadays, a lot of people are doing this, especially for the international contracts. They want to have it as short and as sweet, they say. But can we afford to do that? I want to make it simple, I want to make it short. But can I ignore on the essential elements? I just cannot. So here, even if you are making it a little more verbose, you feel it's getting a little lengthy, do not hesitate. Because even if the person has drafted it well, as a person you are vetting, you feel there are some point that needs to be added. Or maybe the points are added well, but need to be more elaborated. Don't hesitate and do that elaboration. Because instead of thinking that you are questioning the drafter's ability, think it from the client perspective. If anything goes wrong, the client would be the one who would be suffering. And as obviously, when you're talking about a vetting, you need to go to the draft at least more than once. Why we do that more than once? In the corporates, they have a team assigned for the same. So they say we have a double eye check or a four eye check. So one person drafts a document, other person reads, and then finally the third one reads, and then it is finalized. So whenever you are reading, sit with a pencil, or if you are doing it online, start highlighting the points wherein you have any doubt or you want to revisit. Because if there is any ambiguity in the interpretation, you need to be very, very specific and clear that there has to be only one meaning. There has to be only that is most commonly applicable. So let's avoid anything which would create any ambiguity. Because with the ambiguity, everybody reading it will read in a different manner. The most common statement I'm sure you all must have heard n number of times is women without her men is nothing. So this sentence can be read in two different ways. It's the woman who's nothing or it's the man who's nothing. So let's not have any ambiguity and be as specific, as clear as possible. Because of which, in laws, if you all must have noticed, we are right, he, his, their. Why we are including everything? Because we want to reduce all the ambiguities as much as possible. The moment I'm talking about flat, I say in slash flats. So if I'm talking about this one particular property or any other property. So I'm looking to include everything. So we try to put as much as in the close bracket as possible. Okay. And the moment I'm talking about this checking the draft thoroughly, you all must have seen there are some magical words which we say. So the most common is including but not limited to. Why do we say that? Including but not limited to for anything. If I'm talking about the services, I'm talking about the payment terms, or I'm talking about the liabilities, I'm talking about the indemnity, or I'm talking about anybody inflicting some of the crimes on somebody, talking about some damages done. So we always mention this magical word, including but not limited to. So whatever I can think of now, I'm adding now, but it will not be restricted to this. So there could be anything else that could be added. So we always use some of these words because these words keep us in a safe zone. So in future also, we can always come out and protect our client. The moment we are drafting a reply for somebody, some notices, some allegations, what we say, anything apart from whatever is mentioned here, I do not admit to. So everything else is denied. Everything else is false, which is why are we doing this? These are some of the standard terms, you can say some magical words in our, normally we say in our group, we keep adding these things because whatever consciously I'm putting, I only accept that. I only agree with that. Apart from that, I will not be accountable, responsible for anything that is mentioned. Why do we do that? Because for all these replies, this is a no essential part of a reply. Because when I'm reading a document, I might not be able to interpret everything the person wanted to inflict on me. So when I'm replying, I would specifically say that apart from these things, whatever I've mentioned or whatever I admit, I'm denying everything else blankly, flatly, completely. These are the safeguards we have. Because if the person is coming up with some, because we are also aware the moment we talk about the lawyers, twisting and turning the languages, playing with the words, playing with the languages is the most common hobby of the lawyers. And we need to appreciate that because we are among them. We are one in the group. Okay. Definition obviously is very, very crucial, very important from the drafting point of view as well from the vetting point of view, because some of the points might have been missed or unnecessarily added when a person was drafting. So as a person who's vetting, you need to be very, very specific, understand that will it be misinterpreted? Because now when you're vetting, your concern is not that, whatever is written, your concern is how it would be interpreted, how it would be read by somebody else. So from a third party's point of view, the vetting has to be done. That if it is given to a layman, may not be a legal professional, how that person would think this as, how the person would perceive this as. So from a vetting side, the common concern we need to address is this, that drafting the person is drafting obviously from the legal perspective, from the lawyer's perspective, that I'm drafting the document, it has to be as much as sound, as much as legally bound as possible. But from a vetting perspective, you need to have one more concern with the laws. You need to understand a layman's perspective. What if a layman would think for this document? What if a layman would think for this particular section or an article or a content? So any word which would be misinterpreted, might be taken for something else, should always be restricted. Obviously, this is also one thing that we are aware, duties and liabilities needs to be clearly, specifically mentioned. There should not be any ambiguity. If I'm talking about the duties and liabilities, we did not mind having it more elaborated. Instead of leaving anything for the assumption, we mention each and every word very, very clearly. So we need to pen down every single detail without even thinking of making it lengthy. Because when it comes to duties, we are looking for some specifications and we are not looking to compromise on anything that has been promised. So instead of relying on the relationship, this is the most common problem when I'm dealing with an old client. What they would say, we have been dealing with so many years. You don't appreciate these many years of relationship, these many years of continued services we have been giving you. It's just the AMC. It's a routine document. Just sign it. You don't have to go through again. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. But as a legal professional, as a person who's thinking from the future perspective, you don't leave any room for assumptions or taken for granted any clause. You need to specifically mention everything, because what if anything goes wrong tomorrow? Who will take care of that? Similarly, as the duties are responsible, similarly the liabilities are also very responsible. Because if I'm not mentioning the liabilities clearly, the other person will always be looking for ways and means to minimize the liability as much as possible. So these are the important point of view. And as a person who's vetting a document, what can you do? You can do it effectively only when you have spoken to the client clearly, when you asking as many questions as possible. Then only you can do justice to this column, that what exactly are the duties and the liabilities. Because the person who's drafting will have a different mindset, but the person who's vetting has to have a different mindset. Again, similar things for these guarantees, warranties, and indemnities. Guarantees and warranties obviously are taken care well. Nowadays, almost everybody is aware. So I will not focus much on that. But when it comes to indemnity, the most common form of indemnity clause is what we say. The indemnity will be given for, as whatever is the fees of the services received we have. Sometimes the most common is this. People say the person will be indemnified in lieu of the fees of the services received. Otherwise, what we say, big corporates, bigger the client, we say 5 lakh rupees, 1 crore rupees, 5 crore rupees, depending upon the volume of the business we have. So normally indemnity also needs to be a little strict on a higher side. Not unreasonable, but not even very achievable also. Then only there will be a deterrence. Okay. So we need to be specifically mentioning this. And when the person drafted it, maybe the person was aware of few facts, but as a person who was vetting, you need to again cross check. Is this indemnity justified? Are these guarantee warranty clause justified? Because we are talking about the what ifs. We're talking about from a layman's perspective. So you need, as a legal vet, the responsibility is more on the shoulder. Because once the document is drafted, it is still, there is a room for the legal vet to contribute. But once the legal vetting is done, then there is absolute no room for negotiations, no alterations, no modifications. The document is closed, the deal is done. So whatever is are the loopholes, leakages, or the damages, it's already done. So in the best interest of the client, it is good for a legal vet to think the document from a layman's perspective and without ignoring on any detail, try to accommodate as much as possible. Again, this is the hot cake. We have been discussing a lot about the intellectual property rights everywhere. The most common problem of intellectual property rights is valuation. Everybody would say my goodwill is this. I would say, do you understand my goodwill? My goodwill is more than 1 crore rupees. Somebody would say my goodwill is more than 5 crore rupees. How do you know that? The valuation of the goodwill is the most critical task, I would say. So you need to understand when I'm talking about the intellectual property rights, what are the provisions for the valuations or the licensing, or if I'm talking about sharing the property, so how am I giving it to anybody, if I'm talking about any agency that is given to the person, any person who's dealing in it. So these points needs to be clearly mentioned. And with that, we need to always mention the scope, that whenever somebody else is using my intellectual properties, what will be the scope of the application? Will the person be using in totality, or there will be some restriction to that? It is for a particular time, particular transactions, particular area, whatever it could be. So when you are reading it, you need to ensure that while reading, you have gone through the client's requirement, understood the transaction, the seriousness of the transactions, or the future complications it might bring. Accordingly, read the document and make changes if required. I think we already discussed this dispute resolution method. Two people, I'll give you an example. There was a person who was dealing in the laptops, and obviously in the lockdown time, the laptops were the most, fetch things, because everybody was looking for a laptop or a machine, because kids had the online classes, the wife and the husband, almost everybody in the house needed a system, a machine. So laptops are almost all the more in demand. So one person was looking to get these laptops imported. Somebody from US, somebody from China, somebody, they were trying their best wherever they can get. So I was in touch with one person, supposedly Mr. A. Mr. A was dealing with Mr. B, and Mr. B was the one who was getting it from all the countries wherever possible. So B pooled the laptop from all the different parts of the world, and then he was giving it to A on a need basis. So on a year, they said B will give to Mr. A almost 1,000 pieces on a yearly basis, and this contract was for 5 years. So if this contract is for 5 years and they have been dealing, and they're like, we have been dealing with each other since more than 15 years. So there is no much problem. You don't have to get into too much of detail. It's just a simple document I'm looking for, ma'am, because obviously the person was looking to save on some money. So he's like, I want it to be very simple document because we have a prolonged relationship. There are absolutely no chances of any conflicts. But just to be documented, the understanding should be documented. So draft something which is very simple for us, and let us just both sign it. So I just said, okay. I gave them a standard template, which normally people have for the service agreements. I gave them one MSA, and both the parties signed, and the MSA clearly mentioned, because he said you just mentioned the ADR and say it is as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of India. And obviously, I agree to that because he gave me some of the old documents also he had in his place. So he said just prepare it on a similar line. So I gave him, both the parties signed the document. What could be the complications? In that, we are mentioning it is as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, but we did not mention the place, because A is from Mumbai and the B is from Hyderabad, and B is pooling all those systems from across the world. So now, when the problem was there, one consignment was not good. So B said, A, you can get in touch with the C directly because this consignment was given to me by C completely. So whatever you have received is C's responsibility, not mine. Can B share with the responsibility? Obviously not. A will have the legal recourse against the B. But in this time, the practical situation is you need to resolve the matter as early as possible without wasting your too much of time, money, energy. So because of which I'm saying ADR sounds very simple, and we say this is a standard clause which is added to everything. But here also, we might have a lot of ifs and buts if things are not in the right direction. What is a broader vision here? This is the most common thing I said. This is the contribution truly a legal vet will have, because the person who was drafting has done its job really very well. But from a legal vet's perspective, you need to understand how the person reading would react to it, how the person reading would interpret this as. Because as I said, a legal vet will not think from a legal professional, but from a layman's perspective. Not everybody would understand the legal languages, legal terminologies, jargons. So it's we who are aware, so we need to understand that how best we can put it for a layman to understand. Then obviously there has to be an exit option in every contract, every agreement. So we mentioned the termination clause. If everything goes well, we are working together, we continue working together. If there is a problem, we serve notice to each other and we just shake off. So this is obviously to prevent any future complications. We normally mention this termination clause. And jurisdiction is also for the similar thing. If anything goes wrong, the laws of the land will be applicable. Whose land? If both the parties from the same country, then I'm talking about the specific states. So here in jurisdiction and termination, we need from a legal vet perspective, whatever the person has written in the drafting, I'm not asking you to doubt the person who's drafting. I'm only saying you need to be double sure, because as a human, we always are bound to be bound by the human errors. So the person who has drafted has done his job really very well, but as a vet, you are more responsible than the person who was drafting. Because now, as a vet, you need to understand that before signing documents, it is lastly in your hand. You're the person who's responsible if anything goes wrong technically. Because after the legal vet has said yes, then only after the legal vets go ahead, the contract is signed by both the parties. So we need to ensure as much as safety as possible. Okay, now with this, I've covered what could I think about from a legal vetting perspective. That when I was sitting with the document, you are talking about all the laws, conditions, consideration, the future, scope of services, scope of applications, definitions, everything is fine. You're talking about obviously the force majeure. You're talking about the indemnity point. All these are covered well. Jurisdictions, areas, apart from that, there are few things, those are taboo, so we are not looking to include these in the any of the contracts normally. So some of the things those could be damaging are the vague words and the descriptions. Obviously there should not be anything which is vague in nature, any description which is not required, which could fire back, all those should be eliminated. Because the moment I am saying it is good to be elaborated, but it is really very bad or self-injuring to be unnecessarily elaborated. Mention only that is required, because it's good to be silent on few things when there is a possibility of ambiguity. So we leave it for the future. Instead of mentioning anything which is not certain, it's good to be silent. So mention all those descriptions which are required, but try to avoid which is unnecessary. Obviously, in any of the documents, we normally, generally 99%, we do not mention anything about the fees, because fees is something which is discussed personally between the two people. So normally we do not prefer mentioning in the document. When I'm talking about using the word agree instead of warrant, warrants are normally more stern in nature. It might give a negative view, a negative vibe to the person. So we normally use the words agree. We agree, I agree, the person agrees, my client agrees. Whenever I'm drafting a reply and the reply has to be stern, then obviously we are allowed to use these words warrant. We prefer using the word warrants. But till the situation says, it's good to use the normal words. An agreement for a state entity to provide insurance or become the one of the parties. This is the most damaging thing. Whenever we are talking about the person who's creating the document, this is the most damaging thing. Somehow we put ourselves in one of the parties' shoes. This is something which never be done, because as a professional, we need to keep ourselves distant from the transaction and the parties, because this is something which is known as a wasted interest. We cannot afford to have any wasted interest in the business we are into. So we are not getting into any complications, getting involved, getting entangled to any of those things other than our legal services. So we need to keep this thing very, very specifically in our mind. Obviously, exclusivity agreements are good if it is required. If it is not required, it's good to be silent. As I said, it is good to have it more elaborated, only on the points which are mentioned. Unnecessarily mentioning extra points might just backfire us in the future. It might create some problems for our own self to defend ourselves. Then statement of assumption for any personal liability. Why would anybody go out of the way to mention any or admit any of the personal liabilities? Normally we do this because these are all self-inflicted. So we prefer to be silent on these things than going specifically and mentioning these things.
I have three questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely.
One is when vetting a contract, to what extent do we have liberty to rewrite the contract? Like if it is poorly drafted, so obviously the vetting job becomes more difficult. So are we limited only to vetting the already drafted contract, or to if we find that the drafting itself is weak in some areas, like if it has missed a clause or missed a jurisdiction clause, can we add it? That is my first question.
Okay. See, I'll tell you, yeah, this is what even I have faced a lot, because the person was drafted. In fact, I was working for some of the corporates also. So once the somebody has drafted, you dare change it, This is more on a personal ego issue, I would say, or just betraying the person's pride and everything. It goes that way. I understand, but as a person who's vetting, at the most, what you can do is remove the dangerous aspects. If you feel it has been poorly drafted, so try to strike off what is not required, or what I have been doing is I just add the comments there then, because if I am given the responsibility, I need to prove my method, I need to at least be sincere to my job, so I just keep adding in the comments. And we have this track change mode. I think that is the best thing for the lawyers. Whatever document I'm dealing with, I ensure it is the track change mode only. Whoever is doing whatever is crystal clear in front of us. So there is absolute no ambiguity. There is no doubt that who's doing what. So track change mode is the best. And as a person, if you have been given a job, you need to be fair to your job. So I always keep adding the comments there. That I think this is missing. According to me, this should be added. According to me, this is required. And if you feel the person is senior who has given you task, so you can always mention with my limited knowledge, with whatever knowledge I have, with whatever understanding I have. I think these are the magical words we use, when we are trying to be really manipulative or diplomatic.
Then my second question is, see, when we are vetting it, we are generally vetting it on behalf of one of the two parties, right? So like in your observation about striking down damaging provisions,
Okay.
like a damaging provision would be damaging for one party but it would be advantageous to the other party, right?
Normally it is that way. Normally.
So if it suits us, we keep quiet, although it is damaging to the other party, right?
See, we say that. See, I know this is a little brutal, but when we are a professional, maybe I am being a legal professional. I have seen medical professionals. What they say, the client is God. So whatever is beneficial for the client, it is beneficial for us. So even if it's damaging the other party, we need to be quiet on that, no? Because we cannot go out of the way to be the devil's advocate, at least on paper.
And my last question.
Yeah.
To like, if I'm planning to work on this in future,
Yeah.
if I can have a checklist approach towards this, a ready-made checklist, what are the things that I need to check in a contract?
Okay.
Are there any check? I mean, I can and I will build up a checklist of my own, but is there any base available, a kind of a ready-made checklist available anywhere that we can use as a base and then work on that?
See, I'm sure when you're sitting on these various platforms, they people will have, because I started my career with the software agreements. Then I went to the banking NBFC agreements. In banking also, it's a huge ocean. So how do you have a checklist? Because okay, I'll give you example. Now if I'm dealing with a real estate developer. So when I'm talking about the developer agreements, he normally has this permanent alternate accommodation agreement. So that's PAAA. So when I'm reading that PAAA, indemnity is of no use, right? Because in that, if I'm talking about the developer's point of view, the person is not here for indemnity. The person is looking for the property only. So he will be more specifically focusing on the timeline, on the area of the square feet will be given to him. The property will be given to him in his name or somebody else's name, or if it's a rented property, whatever. So the concerns are different. So with every new document from a different field, the concern will be different. So I think the checklist would be available, but it's more or less that generally you create your own checklist with the passage of time. And I think that's how the seniority is, respected also. Otherwise, there is no such closed document which will have the checklist.
So it has to be like industry specific, like
Industry specific, person specific. Because when I'm dealing with media company, I was dealing for two companies. So one company was very, very specific when it comes to the rules and regulations. All the clauses needs to be tightly covered. Everything has to be mentioned. Let the size of document go to any extent. But the other company wanted to be very, very simple and sober. They're like, I don't want any document to go beyond 8 to 10 pages. So it's depend upon that particular person also, with whom you're dealing with. Because ultimately the client is paying you, the client is God. So you go by the client requirement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice webinar. Useful.
What are the basic requirements? Because customizations are necessary for every client. So what are the basic requirements should be added for all clients?
See, as I just said, I was answering Mr. Sushil. I told him the same thing. When I'm talking about a document, can we have a rigid document or a simple template open for all? It's just not possible. Because if as I said, I'm dealing with a software company or a media company or a real estate person, or I'm talking about the NBFC sector, for a bank also, when I'm talking about the 138 matters, or if I'm talking about the defaults, there are so many different matters that will be coming my ways. So I cannot have a one simple template. But yes, when I'm talking about the including everything possible, trying to avoid as much as damage as possible, in that, I think this is with passage of time, or mostly trying to cover all the important elements of contract. That is covered, then I think you're taken care.
Okay, ma'am. And another is, what is the solution if there are any complications and contract vetting hasn't been done properly?
The solution is ADR.
And if they
The
don't,
it was not done properly, it has been signed. Once it is signed, both the parties are legally bound by it. Then you cannot go back on it. Some of the cases people have, I'll tell you, one person was dealing with the Sony company. He was a writer for Sony company, and I was obviously from this person's side, the writer's side. So they both signed the document, and after signing, they realized that there were some points that should not have been there. Sony company, that time maybe the person on behalf of Sony company was very nice. So what they did, they scrapped the original agreement and they signed the new one. So these are some of the possibilities depending upon person to person, because this is not possible every time. No, you cannot strike off and have a new agreement every time. Sometimes people appreciate that they have, the basic ethics, morals in place. So they do that, but not everybody.
okay, okay. So when contract vetting is, like taking place, so is it better if both the clients are there in the same room while it is, being done, or is it that, they'll be separately checking this everything out?
Okay. See, as Mr. Sushil also mentioned, if I'm talking about the damaging provision for A would be beneficial for B. So if I have both the clients sitting with me, I'm doing a ADR, no? I'm not doing the vetting.
I mean, if they will also have their lawyer, I guess. So
Lawyers ultimately sit together, because that's how the contracts are, negotiations are done, no? Contract negotiations.
okay.
Because I would say one thing, the other party would say one thing, and they both will come and sit together and close on some things. But as I'm saying, supposedly, if I'm talking about, let's take a simple example of, ADR. The moment I say courts of Mumbai will have jurisdiction, the other party is from Hyderabad. Why would he agree to courts of Mumbai? So he's
Right.
would always say, I want the courts of Hyderabad to have jurisdiction, and I would be rigid on Mumbai. Then the lawyers sit together, they negotiate, and they come up with some other way. Maybe they would say, okay, let's not talk about Mumbai or Hyderabad. We look for something wherein we are dealing with. So they come up with some third area, or they both say both will have either Mumbai or Hyderabad. We can go to any of these places. So these are the negotiations; those are done on the table itself. But from a vetting point of view, you cannot. Nowadays companies are doing. They come up with coming a document which is more of a neutral nature. So instead of favoring one party, they're looking for a neutral document, because this is more of a morals and ethics and being transparent to your customers. But that's not completely possible. Howsoever transparent you want to be, there would be some points that will be benefiting only you and not the other party. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. All the very best to you all. Have a good day.